Okay.
Morning.
Yeah, I didn't think it'd be like doing a video after or on surgery day after surgery. Um, so
Surgery went well.
yeah, I mean, yeah, the after wasn't.
Surgery went well.
Surgery
initially.
went well, but I don't think I talked about it last night. Well, I talked about it to you, but not in video. A huge part of my anxiety and struggle going into the surgery was that I actually didn't know what the outcome was going to be or how I was going to wake up out of the surgery. Because there were two options, and that was if they went in and found a pocket of obvious infection or pussing. You're moving the table.
Oh, sorry.
That they would just remove the stimulator and be done. Option two was that if they didn't find obvious pussing or obvious signs of infection inside,
I needed more caffeine to live on.
that the stimulator would be moved from my left butt cheek. They would clean it out and clean out the like hematoma and the seroma from the leads and stuff. And then that entails reopening two incisions that weren't already healed, that were from my original surgery. So they went back in the same way, which is painful in and of itself, extra painful. But then they would have to make a new incision on my right butt cheek and move the hardware from one butt cheek to the other butt cheek and have to create a pocket, so an extra incision and a pocket.
Which
So
I think we did talk about yesterday about that your left side seems to have more problems than your right.
So that was really hard because I didn't know what the outcome was going to be, and the latter, the second option, was obviously going to be a lot more painful coming out of than
And it's hard
just
because
removing it.
as a patient, you're going in and you're like, I can't discuss with you what you find during surgery while I'm passed out.
So like really it was like kind of scary, and I'm not good with like out of plan and knowing. Like it's really scary to go in not knowing how you're going to come out, or if you're going to come out and
are you going to have a device in you at all?
Well, but option two I knew was going to be a lot more painful, and I was not wrong. I came out with option two, which was the bigger, essentially having a brand new surgery plus a revision of the original surgery and cleaning out and stuff. Like creating a pocket in itself is super painful because they do this essentially with their hand and like create a pocket
because they're breaking all those like ligament type, not ligaments, but all the
is painful. All the things like muscles, everything. Like you don't realize how much muscles are cut through during spinal surgery until you have one and you go to sit up and you can't sit up by yourself. It's fun.
Like she still has trouble getting up and down.
Yeah.
Type movement
even after my fusion. So you come out like a newborn baby essentially and drowning in pillows and stuffies and things while everything feels like a brick. But anyway, so it came out with extra pain, which was fine because really I should have gone the safer route and just had it removed and then waited if I wanted to try again, because technically infection can spread from one spot to the other, especially by having the same device put back in. So it is a crapshoot.
And part of the reason why you didn't decide to like scrap the whole thing and just like forget it is because you did already go through all the work of getting it approved and doing all the pre-op and all the things that worked months went into this.
Essentially, it was really like emotionally hard for me to think about that, and then I went through a ton of pain with the original surgery and felt horrible and awful and sick and infection-like and all the things. So I'm like, did I just go through all that for it to literally just be removed a week later
and it all like this and
it all be gone? And then essentially there goes my hope at all for any form of pain relief, which is like really sad to wrap your head around that like at 37, like this is the best it gets and it's only going to get worse. At least having it gives me the slight chance that even a little bit of pain relief will happen, which I'm not so sold on will happen, but it's in there to try. But what happened following is really why we made this video. So, and I want to know if anybody else has gone through this or like even knows where to go when something like this happens. So I come out of surgery, like I said, really painful surgery, much more painful of the two options. And like I said, I've had multiple spinal surgeries, so I am like not new to the level of pain that is spinal surgery. And in general, I birthed 2 of my 4 babies without any pain meds. I have a high pain tolerance, so this is not like a pain tolerance thing. Like, it is really painful. I went through a new surgery and revision of the original surgery, both combined at one time. And you're talking screwing around with the spine multiple
Where
times
she's
in a
been
week.
in several days, if not 10 days of pain.
Yes, and like really bad pain. And I knew coming out of the original surgery, I had said that something didn't feel right. Something was wrong. I felt that same way with my spinal fusions where I went septic, so that's always scary.
And that was super part of the hesitation of like, do I
Yes.
continue this and
That.
not know how I'm gonna, how I'm gonna actually feel.
Yeah. Well, and by choosing this route, the second one, which I was kind of bullied into, to be fair, but choosing the second route and taking this risk is taking the risk of infection and septic shock, which is a high risk, and especially a more obvious high risk right now as it just happened with the original surgery, not sepsis, but infection. And that was my biggest fear, is that I feel like my body rejects something going into it, and that was like what I felt like was potentially the problem with the fusion, and now it feels like it's confirmed that my body just rejects things going into it. So I'm extra scared now that that's going to be the outcome of this second go around. But anyways, coming out of surgery, extra pain, extra everything. And like anybody in my spinal cord stimulator groups have all been like, holy crap, like that's one hell of a surgery. And yeah, that's worse than fusion level type pain. They could recognize that it was more than just the normal permanent surgery, because you're revising one side and then the other side you're getting a whole new incision, a whole new pocket created, which like I said is ripping through muscle and all that stuff, and then a clean out too, which is really rough on your body. So get out of surgery and they right away, like I was in tons of pain as soon as I woke up. I was like, holy crap, this is bad. But was relieved, right? Because I expected surgery pain. And if it's really bad, it's really bad. But I didn't feel that like something is not right feeling that I felt coming out of the first one. So I will take all the pain. But when I got to my room, they offered IV morphine, which is what I've been on for multiple days now. And they did that within like in maybe a half hour of being in the room, so it was pretty quick. Did that. Then, like, that was my normal, what I'd been doing. Then came time, they write it on the board for another dose, and this was only like 4 or so hours out from my surgery, so major surgery, 4 or so hours out. And nurse goes to give it to me and talk to the hospitalist about like an adjustment in which med and stuff, and she's like, oh my gosh, he just canceled all your IV pain meds, like he's putting you on your everyday medication, oral medication. And I'm like, well, how the hell is that supposed to work? Because I take 10 milligrams of oxycodone 3 times a day, and I actually dropped down a pill from like a few months ago. But I've been on it for a long time.
4 times.
Yeah. And that, it wasn't because pain got better. It was because I'm just sick of being on pills. That's the whole point of getting this stimulator. But they're putting me on meds that I am on every single day for chronic pain, which barely touches the chronic pain, let alone severe surgical pain. Literally just a few hours out from surgery. That's like unheard of and inhumane to take somebody off of IV pain meds literally just hours after a major surgery. Like, that's not a thing. So anyway, so for some reason the hospitalist was the one making the call on the meds. And when we talked to the nurse, like, I'm in tears because I'm like, this can't be happening because I'm in so much pain. If we don't control the pain and get it under control now, it's going to spiral and I won't be able to catch up and get the pain in control. Like, you have to get it on the front end. If you know anything about like surgical, spinal, chronic pain, like if you don't get it at the front end, you are constantly chasing it until you end up in the emergency room receiving high dose pain medication at ridiculous amounts to try and catch up.
Which we've learned. So to preface this a little bit, in the ER.
Preface?
Preface.
Oh my god.
Preface.
You say it's so weird. Go ahead. Yep.
Now you messed me up. Why do you talk about me? In the ER, when she's in chronic pain, they'll come and give doses and check on her almost hourly. Like,
in insane amounts. Like, I've actually had to stop them.
Like,
recently,
okay, I'm done.
And be like, no
You're
more.
You're going to make me sick.
Because I'm like, you're all trying to make me pain-free, and I'm never pain-free. So we're going to deal with tolerable pain,
like,
is my goal. Just tolerable.
Controlled, tolerable.
Yeah, controlled, tolerable pain.
Where she's that I deal with every day. In pain.
Like, a 7 out of a 10 is usually where I sit, which is high, but I'm used to that, and it's tolerable. Like, I can function.
Yeah.
But
they
anyway,
come in and they give doses.
Mm-hmm.
As like soon as she was admitted, that all ended, even before the surgery.
Yes, but they were doing a ridiculous amount since admission, and I was refusing, like, taking every dose and trying to do every 6 hours instead of every 3 for IV pain meds. And I asked them to switch from a really high dose Dilaudid, like, med down to morphine, which is not as strong, because I'm like, 1, I don't want to be sick and it makes me feel sick after a while, but 2, like, if I'm not in high intense pain and I can be tolerable, then I'm not going to do the additional. So I actually, like, requested a lower, less strong pain med and to do it not as often. But then comes surgery, and then they're like cutting you off 4 hours after surgery, which is just insane. And so we pointed out, like, the nurse ended up telling us the hospitalist made this call. Because if you've been through surgery, that makes no sense. The surgeon is the one who sets your pain meds after surgery, not the hospital, unless the hospitalist is the one that did the surgery.
We didn't even know hospitalists existed until sepsis, where they had to step in and take over care.
So it didn't make sense, because it's not like I used on-call for emergency surgery. They used my surgeon. So my surgeon should be making the calls on my medication. So we pointed that out to the nurse, and so she ended up contacting my surgeon. Then my surgeon talked to the hospitalist, and then the hospitalist essentially talked him into, yes, cutting off is a good idea, which is just nuts. So then we spent the next 4 hours of me in tears, freaking out, like, I can't get my pain under control. I'm trying to walk. I'm walking, like, tons. I walked from the second I got in the room almost, like, because I know that if you don't just suck it up and deal with the front end of that pain, then you don't walk. And once you start walking, after a bit, you get much better pain relief. But it's not going to cut all your pain after a major spinal surgery. You use that in addition to pain meds.
Well, and the muscles are still hurting.
Yeah, everything hurts. But it helps you not, like, freeze and have, like, major muscle stiffness that you're going to have if you just lay there the entire time. So I tend to, like, walk and move a lot. But so I'm trying to, like, walk or do something that's going to help, and nothing's helping. My nurse felt awful because she did not agree with their choice to do this, and neither did the charge nurse, because we had to go to the charge nurse. We called patient advocacy. We called the, like, call center, the hospital, whatever, and that lady was insane and, like, cut me off, would not listen.
You know, when you call, like, almost like
it's an operator.
The main
it's
operator of the hospital to get directory.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, just kept sending us to the ER. Like,
So
I
I
think
would
she
start
thought it
talking.
was like a medical, like,
She wouldn't listen to my story at all. She cut me off and was like, okay, done. Like, or she told me, hold on. And then she transferred me in the middle of my story that I never finished. Not even the middle. I didn't even get that far. Transferred me to the ER. That
like, I
made no
think she
sense.
kept thinking it was a medical
Yeah.
issue.
So then I
which
tried
it was
again.
a medical issue, but you're inpatient.
Yeah, not that an emergency room was going to do anything about. Then tried to call again, did this multiple times, and she would either not say anything and just transfer me, like, while I was talking. Finally, she, after a few times, literally was like, I can't help you. And then transferred me to the emergency department. I was like, holy crap, like, you've not even heard what's going on at all.
We knew the ER wasn't the
No,
appropriate location.
like, finally I just talked to the emergency department because I'm like, well, nobody else is listening to me and they're actually listening to what I'm asking about.
Like, sorry, we're calling you.
Yeah.
We're not trying to call you, but this is all
Right,
I'm getting
that.
because the directory lady is only giving me you.
But then I kept getting cut off, like, as in, like, phone disconnected. Then I get to one of the charge nurses, I guess, down in the emergency department. He was like, he had a great plan. He's like, I'll connect you with the hospital supervisor. But then I got disconnected. So I'm like, I don't know if he was trying to get me on the line with him or what was going on, because he's going to have to assess me or, like, hear my situation. So he has to talk to me, you would think. But after hours of this, and I mean hours, Leslie went and walked the hospital because we're like, this phone situation's not working. Patient advocacy isn't calling back. Left multiple messages between me, Leslie, the charge nurse. Like, the nurses felt horrible. They knew that this was not okay.
And this all started before 5 o'clock, but then it escalated till
No, it
after
started
8.
at 1:30 to 2:30. Started around 2:30 because
Well, that's
that
when
was
your last dose was, but you didn't know that they cut you off until later.
No, it was 3:30 because that's when I was supposed to
Right.
get the dose, and then she messed up the time.
Yeah.
So 3:30. That still should have been plenty of time for somebody to call somewhere, and wasn't happening. So Leslie finally on foot was like main part of the hospial looking for an office or like information desk, anything
or something.
Nothing. So she's like, I got a list of the board of directors.
Yeah,
that's what she could find.
There was pictures of the board of directors on the wall. So I was
no
like,
humans.
I will message them.
Do people not need advocacy after hours? Because a lot of times people come in after hours or at midnight.
But I
or
feel
whatever,
like we've run into this
discharged.
before too on weekends.
So that's not happening. Charge nurse tried very hard, and like, seriously, nurses are superheroes. They're amazing, and several nurses have saved my life multiple times. So I have I
when she
very
did
highly think of nurses
on both shifts, because there was a shift change during all of this too. Both times she was like, I have nothing against my primary nurse. It has nothing to do with y'all. I'm not asking for a charge nurse or a supervisor.
And let me tell you, I will never be the person yelling and screaming at a nurse or taking my pain or frustration out on the people taking care of me that are advocating for me either. Nurses are amazing advocates when they're on your side, and I think a lot of times they tend to be biased towards the patient because they actually get to know you and talk to you. But new charge nurse comes in after 4 hours, like I said, 4 hours. Finally, they're like, we're transfer house supervisors talking to the charge nurse, all this stuff, right? But I'm thinking this is going to go nowhere because, well, the house supervisor isn't even calling me or hearing my side or like coming to assess me.
We didn't know what they knew, or
I was in tons of pain, like shaking, crying sort of deal. And like, if you just assessed me, I feel like it would be an obvious your pain's not under control. New charge nurse comes in. The first words out of her mouth were, I have your morphine, your IV morphine. I'm
and
gonna
I
give
think we
you.
were both kind of like,
We're like, wait, what?
Because we had requested for her to come and talk to us,
Right.
just so we
Just
knew
for
where
her to
things
talk to
were
me
at.
because I hadn't talked to the new charge nurse and I knew she was gonna have to deal with this chaos. She comes in, she's got like the syringe in her hand, and she's like, I have your IV morphine, but you cannot be calling the ER 13 times. And we were like, wait, what?
No,
and
I
she's
swear.
like, you cannot be calling the ER. And I'm like, we didn't. Like,
I was like, please apologize
right?
to them because it was not our fault.
No, I was like, the lady that was literally answering the operator part of the phones was transferring us just by default every single time.
Nobody asked for the ER.
13 times. Not once would I ever have asked for the emergency department.
If we wanted to go to the ER, we could have walked down there.
You're talking, I called patient advocacy. I called another,
You called HR eventually.
yeah, called HR, called multiple different
Like, it was really just
potential
any
ones,
phone
but
numbers we
never
could
did
find.
emergency department cross my mind as being an appropriate place for me to get information or an advocate. But
Although
yes.
the ER was good to you this week.
So, long story,
We could have
not
found
short.
our ER nurse that we like down there
That's
and
true.
been like, you can come advocate for
That,
us.
long story not short, I won the situation, which I mean, I truly believe that most people could see that it's like inhumane and completely cruel to cut a person off 4 hours after a major surgery from IV pain meds and put them on what they use every single day for chronic pain orally. That doesn't make any sense.
I think
It barely touches my chronic pain, let alone being able to manage severe, intense, acute pain from a surgery.
I think it was scary because we're going into nighttime and we're like, how is she going to be able to
I wasn't going to be able to
for
manage the
hours
night.
and
Like,
hours?
it's that kind of pain where you're like, I'm going to find the nearest window and jump to make it stop. Like, it's that bad when it gets that bad.
There's a roof here and then you couldn't jump and the windows don't open for a reason.
Okay, but I can make my way out. I've escaped down the elevators and all the things. Just wait till you're asleep. But, yeah, so I got the IV pain med back, and I was literally advocating for one final dose of an IV pain med, one final dose of IV morphine. That was it, because all I wanted was a plan. Because if I can make a plan for how to manage the pain, then I've got this. But I needed at least one more dose of some sort to get myself figured out and under control and how I was going to manage after that point. Now, they indefinitely put me on IV pain medication is until I leave, I guess. And I'm like, that
Or
wouldn't
as
have
you
been.
take them.
But the thing is, now it's necessary. It wouldn't have been necessary had they treated the pain on the front end. Like I said, not allowed the pain to spiral. Then it would have been one dose. I would have had a plan to figure out how to get myself off and on just oral meds and done deal. But you're talking like hospitalist is over there like, well, if you discharge, you're going to have to discharge AMA, and if you do that, insurance isn't going to cover, and isn't going to cover
And
the
we're not
hospital
gonna give
stay.
you pills.
Yes, and we're not going to prescribe anything for you. Like, threatening and ridiculous, and like backed me into a corner of completely powerless, which feels awful. And then I have this very major trigger that comes with feeling invisible, because I feel that way a lot, and not being heard. And I have never felt so powerless and unheard in a situation as I did today. And especially where people are just disconnecting me or transferring me
Well, and it was
before I can
super
even talk.
frustrating. Like, why won't a doctor come and talk to us?
So the
You're-
doctors, yes, the hospitalist and the surgeon refused to come speak with me. The nurse tried to get them to come at least talk to me and view
Like,
me in person,
But
too.
that's part of making a plan. You work with your patient to
Right.
come up with a plan.
And he has not talked to me at all throughout this entire ordeal.
The surgeon.
After being admitted, the surgeon has not talked to me at all this week, which is nuts. He sent his PAs, and he was supposed to talk to me prior to surgery, before I was knocked out and got like anxiety meds and stuff to go into surgery. And they said, okay, after you talk to Dr. Alm, then the anesthesiologist will give you those meds. We want you to be like clear-minded. He never came. So then they just eventually just gave me the meds.
And I never heard the results of surgery.
No, they didn't
or-
come say anything about how the surgery went. Nothing. Like, not what they did, not how
One
the
of the
surgery
nurses
went.
said,
None of
"Oh,
it.
well, they might have talked to her like in
Which I don't believe happened, because I do have
Recovery.
memories of the random nurses in recovery.
And I'm like, but even if they talk to her in recovery, that's not adequate because
No.
the patient's not awake enough at
No,
that point.
me on anesthesia is not awake for the first multiple hours. Even if I'm walking, even if you're having full conversation with me, I will not remember.
I have a video of her having full conversation with the hospitalist this
Oh, you
morning.
have a video?
Yes, and she doesn't remember it.
That's what I'm saying, and I was walking. Like, I was walking, and I have no memory of the hospitalist Well, I have memory of seeing him out there, but I don't remember him coming back in
then
the
we
room or
came in
talking
here
to
and
me or
talked to him.
anything. So yeah, if you are in this situation, which I hope you never are, advocate for yourself and don't take no for an answer. And I mean, if you have to go like seriously make people think you're mentally insane, it's okay. Like I did that. I'm pretty
But
sure they all thought I was mentally
I
insane.
said
Today.
that, like, she's struggled with being able to advocate and being able to speak up and not just take whatever somebody's telling her word for it. And we even talked to one of the nurses about this the other night. Like, we don't take doctors' words for it. Like, we have to push and advocate. And so I said that I am proud of her today, that she doesn't shut down as much as she used to and is able to be like, no, I need
No,
something
but I still do
more.
it nicely, and I will never be a jerk about it. But like, unless you're the person that's doing it to me, I mean, I might have been more harsh with the hospitalist if I talked to him or the surgeon or something, but still probably not. But I fully anticipate after the situation that the neurosurgeon that did my surgery is probably going to drop me before my follow up, especially because he was refusing communication even before any of this. Like, I feel like it's really sad, and I have lost so much trust in the medical system and the people that I've been brought to and that people refer and say are amazing, because he and his staffs were so compassionate to me in the office with my history of sepsis and talking it through. And like, if you even question that situation is happening, or question you might have an infection, or question any of that, we'll get you in same day, right away. We're super responsive. We're going to treat it. We're going to just be proactive
We're going to
about
get
it.
you in the office so we can
Not
have eyes
months.
on you.
They didn't call me till the end of the day, and the office was closed,
Multiple
and ended
times.
up having to go to the ER.
Multiple
And then,
times.
yeah, this was multiple times. And then when it came down to the surgery and asking about removal and stuff like that, the PA essentially bullied me into the surgery, because her response was, well, if you choose to remove it, we will no longer be working with you and you'll just be working with pain management. So essentially, if I chose to wait out the infection, treat it, and then have them go back in and essentially replace it, which is what a lot of surgeons do if there is an infection, she's essentially saying, we won't do it. You're just on your own. And I feel like that's major bullying in that sort of situation, instead of talking, which I just wanted to know more about, like choosing removal, understanding why they think revision, all of that.
Like,
I don't
is
think
her
it's
body
unreasonable.
rejecting it? Is it infection? Is it
Right.
this? Is it that?
And I do think my body did reject it. It doesn't really make any sense otherwise, because I followed the rules in this case. I don't always, but in this case I was following the rules, and the battery should not have migrated without some sort of infection. My white blood
Or
cells,
injury, but
yeah,
you
or
didn't
injury, and I
do-
didn't fall or anything. My white blood cells were high, lactic acid was high, like these things that scream infection at you. And then as soon as we started antibiotics,
At your request.
at my pushing, essentially, all those things got better that hinted towards infection. My BP did get really low, which is scary. That was like one of the major signs of sepsis for me, so that was triggering. But that too, with the PA, she essentially like talked down and condescending about the hospital treating infection, and blew off all my symptoms and even my lab work as, well, the hospital basically put this in your head about infection when it's not real. And I really think that they're trying to save themselves and their infection rates, as well as
Like, nobody's officially called it infection.
right, like
Like,
but
on
the
the record.
hospitalist and other people that have looked at it have been like, well, I mean,
That's why I
It looks
recorded
like
him, because he
infection.
did sound like he said infection this morning, and then I didn't catch it, but it doesn't say it in the notes. He says
He
it
did.
doesn't look like it's infection
yes,
in the notes.
that was him. That was a different guy than the original guy who said it looks like an abscess.
No,
It feels like an
I'm
abscess.
saying
It looks like
after
infection.
surgery, it sounded like he said that,
Yeah,
and so I missed it on recording.
gotcha. But the hospitalist originally was like, he felt it, he looked at it, was like, seems like an abscess to me. Seems like infection.
Which
and,
today they did say it wasn't abscess.
Yeah.
But it was still of all that fluid was responding to something.
Yeah, so it responded to antibiotics. and I had all the signs of
And like
infection.
physically, her inflammation and
And
swelling
I was
and stuff
dying.
was
I'm telling
getting a
you,
lot better.
was dying at a point, like, felt horrific. Could not stay awake. It was all very scary. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it usually is a duck.
But that was another problem, like when she was like fairly sick the other day and not waking up much and lethargic and very, very weak.
They brushed
Nobody
it off.
came and seen her in that day either.
They essentially made it out like I was a hypochondriac, which is funny because then the next day I was totally fine and back to normal and all that after tons of antibiotics and tons of
Because
fluids.
it was in your head. You had the antibiotics and you got better and woke up.
Yeah, it is what it is, and it's sad, but you have to like be really careful with who you choose to do these things and
But
work with.
I mean, that wasn't the situation here. As far as like choosing well, like technically you did choose well this time, and it's still.
Yeah, I mean, we looked him up. We did all the research.
We talked to others that.
I can't say that about Dr. Death, aka Dr. McCord.
But this situation,
he was horrific and had stuff, but you had to dig. Whereas this guy,
multiple people and
multiple
others
people
in the
recommended.
field were like, he's really good.
Don't know how you weed out the ones that are all talk and not action, because I don't think he anticipated having to like actually act upon his words in the office and like get me in fast and treat his infection and all these things. I don't think he felt like he was going to face that situation, but then he did, and then he was all hands off, and his entire office was. So all of that to say, you have to be really careful, and sometimes even if they seem to be perfect in all the ways and compassionate and stuff, you don't know until you're in the moment of put your money where your mouth is. And I don't know why, but once again, faced with the situation of another not great surgeon. I mean, I don't know, his work was probably fine. But he didn't want to claim infection rates, therefore he backed off. Didn't want to treat it, didn't want to do things properly, and that's dangerous. It comes down to being dangerous. And that's not living up to the oath that you take as a doctor either. Like, it's all just hard. But anyways, I'm still here until
Yay.
tomorrow.
I thought you were talking
Hospital.
physically.
Well, I mean, I am still physically here. I survived the surgery. It's awful. Lots of pain. Still catching up on the pain now, because I was, by the time we figured it out, 4 hours after the
Scheduled
dose I was
dose,
supposed to have.
which was 8 hours since
Yeah,
the
which is a
original
lot
dose.
after such a major surgery. But yeah, so both my butt cheeks are out of commission right now.
That sounds wrong.
Yeah, I
Just
told my
saying.
kids you can't touch my butt, either of them, either butt cheek. And nice incision down my spine for a second time. So 2 of them were cut into twice.
It does look like they did better on the bandaging as far as like not using stuff she's allergic to this
Yeah,
time
we totally told every single one of them multiple times I'm allergic to adhesive and surgical glue, and they still use that.
They were like, is paper tape good? Yes.
Which is awful, because then I get chemical burns, and
And then
it is
she
just
came
so
out
bad.
with not paper tape last time. She does
Right.
have paper tape now.
Yeah, that's nice. So, I told the really nice lady who prayed for me and was singing gospel music about
You
it.
didn't
So
tell me about this.
she's super nice. She was cool. I'm telling you, nurses and stuff, they're amazing. But you got to watch doctor-wise who you trust, because they're not as personable. They don't care as much, and you don't get to know them as much. So, it is what it is. But I'm supposed to leave tomorrow. And hopefully that will still be the case despite them giving me IV pain meds, because one of their biggest reasons was they wanted me to be off IV pain meds 24 hours before discharge, which I said was fine. Then we'll make it a later discharge. If that's the case, give me one last dose, and then I'll wait 24 hours. But for some reason, that was a hill they were willing to die on, and now I just have IV pain meds indefinitely, so I don't know how it's going to work for discharge. But I'm going home tomorrow one way or the other, so we shall see how this goes. Wish me luck.